So I've just come from the States where they are obsessed with military culture and the idea of valor. And stolen valor is a huge issue there. So you get military discounts. I went to a restaurant in Wisconsin where they had a table reserved for fallen veterans. It's fucking weird. If you steal valor over there, if you claim to be something that you're not and you laugh at someone in the military, they will kick the shit out of you immediately. The cops will probably turn a blind eye. It is such a capital offense to steal valor. Whereas here, you can laugh as a military person and everyone's like, oh yeah, you're a veteran. Here, have a copy. It's graceful. Because, I mean, come on, man. It's just such a basic thing. Don't do that. But
didn't stop Brian Dennehy.
Yeah, well, yeah,
he did it twice. I mean, he was found out, and then he did it again.
You will be shamed.
It is a huge problem. It's a huge problem here too. You get a lot of people who do just pretend that they had greater roles in conflicts than they actually did, or some who just make it up altogether. There was a fellow on Anzac Day who'd actually addressed a dawn service.
Wow.
With politicians, state and federal politicians, and he was introduced as a brigadier general. He was nothing more than a corporal.
How cheeky.
No one knew, and they just, the dawn service concluded. He spoke at it, and then people saw him go to the Anzac Day footy game, Collingwood v Essendon, and there he was with all his medals, and people, there was literally an audience of millions of people watching that going, wait a minute, I know that guy. And that's when he got bumped. That's when he got bumped.
Fuck him. What
happens quite a lot.
Anyway.
So then this tour then saw Simon Timothy, who's also known as Sentinel, and Matt Lawson. They got up and did some emotional and moving speeches about their experiences, where Simon was arrested and he was actually slammed to the ground.
So Poppy, you'd pop a Poppy on for him, wouldn't you? Just to get us arrested and slammed to the ground.
Oh, yeah, yes. And Matt, who was, famously shot by a rubber bullet or whatever it was, a beanbag or something. Yeah.
Famously, because he won't stop fucking talking about it.
Oh, my gosh. And he was telling them, shoot me, so they did.
So funny.
But yeah, so it was actually funny because this march brought back many memories for us watching because, stuff was being thrown from the windows and commuters on the trams were giving them the finger while the freedom fighters stuck their iPhones in their faces.
Anthony Burge went off tap because someone threw eggs.
Yeah, I saw that.
We've got kids here. You could have killed them with the eggs.
But they didn't have kids there, did they?
No.
It was like,
not at that time. Not at
that particular juncture in the protest. And really, eggs, I don't think I haven't heard of it. It may happen. That an egg has killed someone.
I'm sure.
But I've never heard of it.
Somewhere in the
very
US,
few egg-related fatalities in Australia.
It's a rare one. So, look, that sounds like it's a wrap of day one, which was the Friday, right? It's this sort of long weekend sort of thing meant to go for 5 days. What happened on Saturday? Because there were several different protests on that day, which made it look like it was going to be a massive mess. And, of course, it was. Bernie Finn had the anti-abortion march for the babies. There was, of course, a pro-choice counter-protest because fuck them. Then there was a rally in support of Julian Assange, apparently. And then even they had these cooker groups who decided to have their own rallies to break away from Tammy's Mission2Melbourne plan, which was just going to splinter the whole thing and turn it into these two dumb small groups with no fucking purpose. It sounds like a mess. I'm sure it was. But how did it actually play out on the day?
Yeah, right. So Saturday gave us that first real insight into the split between Mission2Melbourne. So the normal Saturday protest always starts at Parliament Steps. It's their spiritual home. We have the battle for the steps with the cops before we start the march. Then we reclaim the steps when we come back. It happens every single week. Tammy's protest was starting at Government House. And then they were moving to Princess Bridge. And that's where they were going to join with the Assange protest to make the human chain.
Okay.
So that was the plan for Mission2Melbourne.
Another gimmick.
The breakaway
I never saw
group,
I never saw the human chain. I walked past and there was just kind of loitering around the bridge.
I think there was one. Like, I do think I've seen a video of them all, like, along one side of the Yarra, across the bridge, and down the other side of the Yarra. But the breakaway group decided, no, we are going to those steps. We do not care. And of course, the Canberra guys went with them because that was right next to where the pro-choice rally was going to be starting. So they went, there's going to be a little bit of aggravation.
Cause some shit.
So Sandy and I actually went to the counter rally.
Yeah, it was great.
On Saturday. So it was terrific.
Yeah, good.
So we did go to it. And there was some initial bluster because the normal protest crew got pushed right to the far side of the steps. They couldn't have the whole steps. So they didn't like that at all. They kept trying to come into the pro-choice rally space and were told to literally fuck off very, very loudly.
I'll bet.
They had a couple of those really annoying Chris Covery type, well, we're just asking questions. But the Yard boys were there too. So they just spent the entire time blocking their view, not getting out of their vision, stopping them from interviewing people. So they ended up leaving.
Yeah, that's
thank
good.
God.
Yeah,
the normal Saturday crew were definitely outnumbered, but they were definitely outvoiced.
Yeah, okay.
So they kind of tried to start something. I think they realized they weren't going to win. They kind of just slunk off. They just kind of started their march and they were gone with boo ringing in their ears, like they were given a fair send off, which was good. But
some of them are driven for miles. Some of them are driven from FNQ.
Correct.
To be booed.
I heard one group say to one guy say to the pro-abortion, "Oh, maybe your mum should have had an abortion." The other one goes, "Maybe your mum should have had an abortion." Anyway.
Yeah.
very grown up.
Yeah. One thing though, just the observational part for us, there was a lot of police at the pro-choice rally. A lot. Like Port were there, the horses were there.
Yeah.
Look, and I get that, it was a counter rally, but Bernie's babies thing was down at Treasury Gardens. It was a stage set up, like they really weren't that close. But anyway, we went for one block. We marched down. We tried to turn left, I think, onto Lonsdale Street. Cops lined it straight away. Protesters did try and march. I swear to God, within 3 seconds, the pepper spray was out.
Oof.
Like Sandy and I were right there. Right?
We nearly got pepper sprayed at our first protest.
We're like, oh my God, it's pepper spray. Oh my God. And we're like trying to get away from it. But literally we were like, what the hell happened there? Like, that was weird.
Vic Pol gonna Vic Pol.
But I got to be honest, like you guys know, I waste many Saturdays watching these people march around the city for 3 hours every week, doing what they want, going where they want. And like to see the difference in that reaction, and like I get it that it was a counter protest, but they were literally nowhere near Bernie Finn's thing. They could have gone on a little march around the block and it would have done no harm.
Yeah.
And I guess the weirdest thing after seeing that was on Saturday night, the video of Brad and his Canberra mates yahooing out the front of Parliament, banging on the doors, we're coming for you, get out here, Dan, kicking the door, banging on windows, and not a copper in sight. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, that's pretty
so it is a concern, isn't it? I don't even think it's a counter-protest thing. I honestly think that that it's kind of capricious how the police will often respond. How many would have been in the pro-choice rally? Several hundred?
Maybe 300.
300,
and I'd say without overestimating, I'd say there was 300 cops.
You don't need horses.
Okay, so that's another thing too. So they've got your numbers. They've got the numbers there. So that's why I think there was perhaps an excessive response to that counter protest. Anyway,
cops being cops.
Yeah, look, I mean, it is interesting. The interactions between police and public seem to differ from the bits and pieces that I saw too. The initial Cooker protest saw the crowd chanting "Uphold the right," "Tene le droit" used to be, and they anglicised it, until the police lost their patience and started showering them in Tabasco sauce. Since then, cookers and cops haven't got along very well. But I would still say there's a fair amount of sympathy within the police force for cookers.
Yeah,
because we
I'd
did
say so.
see some pretty ordinary behaviour on Saturday night, including sort of vandalising of Victorian Parliament that just went unchecked.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was very little disturbance with the police throughout the whole weekend. Like, you know, Vic Pol just basically guided them around the CBD like tour guides over the 5 days.
Have you seen the art centre?
Yeah, that's right. It was like that, you know. But yeah, there was an incident at the Governor's Gate by Brad and Co, which we'll get into in a bit. And apparently someone hit a cop at the back of their head. And when the cop brought it to Tammy's attention, she just really didn't give a shit. She was like, I don't care. Yeah, and there was a video of what looked to be an arrest sent to us on Twitter. I think that was at Flinders Street Station, right, Sauce?
Yep.
Yeah. But other than that, the marchers went around with not too much trouble. They actually did really well.
Yeah.
On the 2 days that I attended as an observer, I was paying attention to the general public, mostly to gauge how people felt about them.
Yeah.
I was sitting off to the side, so I was clearly just an observer. And by the way, I stood out. I was the only one that was sitting there in a massive park. But anyway, when the doctors march kicked off, I had a couple, because obviously I'm sitting there. I had my phone out. I was, you know, video recording them starting their march, and this couple came up to me, who had been walking their dog, and they're like, oh, what's all this about? You know. And so then the three of us, you know, we watched them march past us, and they commented on the unusual banners, and they're like, what's that about bioweapon? And I'm going, yeah, that's an anti-vaccine kind of banner saying that, you know, the vaccines are going to genocide us. So anyway, they're like, really?
Oh,
So anyway-
wow.
Really?
Hearing that for the first
Yeah.
time.
I
Oh,
was
no,
like,
I'm going to die tomorrow. That sucks.
Yeah, and it was kind
and
of
I didn't
like,
ever get to protest. Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of like, what do you tell people? But anyway, especially knowing all that we know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the man that was talking to me, I didn't catch their names, I'm sorry, but he told me that when he viewed the flags upside down, that was one of his first comments. He goes, oh, that's quite disrespectful. I don't really like that. And he goes, oh, there's some soldiers at the back there, some veterans. I'm like, yeah, kinda, sorta. And
Yeah.
he's like, well, you know, I'm an ex-Navy man, and you know, to wear your uniform kind of when you're not on duty, that's actually really, really frowned upon and really disrespectful.
Well, it is. It
interesting.
is. I mean, these guys have all been demobbed too. It's not as if they're in the ADF now.
No.
The upside down flag is a sign of distress.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's all highly disrespectful. I mean, they, as you know, they wear their military service, as some of it's very, very questionable, on their sleeves.
Yes, they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, and like, so from his perspective, being ex-Navy, it was really interesting to get his perspective, because I had heard that, you know, it had been disrespectful, but to have someone else kind of confirm that. And I said, oh, yeah, you know, they're wearing poppies as well. And when I said that, they went, oh, no, you know.
Yeah.
And he's like, and it's right next to the shrine. He said it was really, really offensive. So,
Yeah.
you know, that this is how they're viewed. But at the farmers' speech on Monday, again, I was the only observer. Well, you know, everyone else is exercising and walking their dogs who went past it. They were really, really uninterested.
Yeah.
I was sitting there and one lady in a car went past and she had a window down. She's going, oh, will you just go home already? and then a man was walking past with his partner, and he looked over at the protesters sitting in their little group, and he said to his partners, oh, no, it's those fucking see you next Tuesdays. And I had to really try. I was like, trying not to laugh. But anyway, yeah. So, you know, that's how other people, but, you know, and then I also looked at like at the Flinders Street speeches when they were doing all of that. You know, I noticed some tourists took some photos. Some people stood on the street with their arms crossed, and many more, though, just walked past completely uninterested. Like they just wanted to get to where they were going. They really didn't care. in my opinion, just by standing there and kind of observing, looking around, the speeches had very little impact, if any at all, So, the flags, the people crowded on the steps and the loudspeaker did turn heads, but no one was really, stopped to listen and really.
So what crowd numbers are we talking about here at Flinders Street?
At that one, the Flinders Street one, when I was there probably would have been a couple of hundred. And so there was a few faces that I were familiar with, Michael, Grey Grift, we call it, and Elsa Zoni had turned up, so I saw her. So,
she's quite someone. So. Look, I believe that Tammy claimed there were going to be no speeches at the rally, but it seems like there were. I mean, like, the leaders of the movement love the sound of their own voices.
The microphones.
So it's inevitable. I love when they're in a circle of 4 people and they're holding a microphone. You don't need the microphone, but I guess it's karaoke hour, so go for your fucking life. But were there any highlights from the speakers on Saturday? Did someone say something especially stupid, or was there anything especially offensive? What happened?
Well, they had the doctors from AMPS, they were speaking about how they were gagged and how APRA was taking away their rights to treat patients with full consent and were restricting what treatments they could provide, all of those things.
Good.
AMPS is just part of that red union, not a real union.
Yeah,
that's right.
And some of the doctors that speak are they're not GPs, they're anaesthetists. So you're not being gagged because who are you going to tell? You don't need to give informed consent. You're not bloody vaccinating anyone.
Exactly.
They just don't want to be vaccinated. So they're being struck off or restricted because they're unvaccinated. One GP did speak that I looked up, but like Mark Hobart, she was caught out giving away exemptions. That's why she was struck off.
Which is a bit naughty.
Yeah, and then Hoodie was there. He did a speech about
the
conscious employees. Yeah, he was. He stood up. Yeah. So he was talking about his conscious employees having a court case action, and which is where we actually saw the image of a donation bucket going around. So.
That's been good. I've liked that.
There we go.
Posting that saying, look at these grifters. I'm like, you are grifters. It's just that now you're pointing fingers at others, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
That's very funny.
Yeah. And one other thing that was of note on that day was they had arranged to have like a few hundred A4 laminated posters on stakes, and on each poster was a story of an apparent vaccine injury or death. So these were displayed at their camp at the governor's house, but when they did their march, everyone was told to grab one and then take that with you down the march and, show it around to everybody at Flinders Street Station. But, I mean, no one was looking at them. I think it was just me. I was looking at them. I took pictures, but, it was very much a predictable anti-vax rally.
That sounds very much like good old anti-vax. Not so much a freedom movement, but good old anti-vax stuff going on there.
Timmy stubbed his toe, and now we see the vaccine's real effect on the youth. Put it on a poster.
Yeah,
Take
put it on
with
a poster.
You. Fucking idiots.
So after they finished there, they went back to have a solution session where they all sat around and listened to people. So first up was Thanos. Now the day before,
he doesn't have solutions.
He posted he's got a sore leg. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sorry guys, I won't be able to march, but I will see you tomorrow. Yeah. So he pitched tripe, and it will forever be called tripe because he called it that himself in a horrible typo instead of tribe.
Oh, that's
So now we've adopted it.
Good old Thanos. He never lets me down.
So look, I don't like talking about their appearance, but he's still got a fair amount of junk in his trunk. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Knockdown hasn't been kind.
It really hasn't. So he spoke about that. Darren from Frankston spoke about My Place, which is their correct, which is their parallel council. Stop paying your rates.
Yeah, that sounds very sketchy.
To be honest, there's a lot of these popping up. Popping up.
It's the new thing we're keeping an eye on. Anyway.
Yeah,
definitely.
do keep an eye on it because
it's that shift into that sort of soft-sit mentality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then Tricky got up and went on and on and on and on about people's revolution. I mean, that's why he came, this whole thing, we're coming to protect you guys from the cops. He brought 5 guys with him. Like, come on. Yeah.
I saw their T-shirts too with Guardian on it. Oh, shut
and did you see they've got like cameras and earpieces and it's all very serious. They take it very serious.
Just laughing.
He came, Tricky came for recruitment. I mean, Victoria is a huge untapped market for Tricky and all of his groups. Yeah. And then, weirdly, Samson got up and did what could be one of the strangest speeches I've ever heard in this movement, which is saying a lot.
Yes, it is.
So Samson Jack is the guy who shared the address and phone number of who he said was Dan Andrews' mum. And he was kind of kicked out of the movement for a while, but I've noticed that he's kind of slinking his way back in.
It actually wasn't Dan Andrews' mum. It was it was just an Andrews who lived vaguely in the area where Dan Andrews' mum lives, which is Wangaratta. And so this poor guy with the surname Andrews would have just been absolutely, this weekend just would have been horrible.
Just inundated with fuckwits.
Just absolutely bombed by idiots. Yeah.
It's astounding what they get up to.
It's really interesting. I find this shift entirely predictable, but I find this sort of shift to this kind of, we're not going to pay our rates, we're not going to pay our way, we're not going to pay our taxes. That sort of shift to the sovereign citizen sort of movement, or plucking ideas from the soft sits. I think that's entirely predictable, but I think that's kind of a next sort of step for a lot of the
It's there
cookers.
In the culture wars. It's that, and it's like picking on trans kids and anti-abortion, that sort of stuff. But I think there'll be a lot of people who are more of the hippies who decide to go the sob-sit route because they're generally atheists and they're generally meant to be progressive and their core is that hippie sort of thing, but they're still angry at nothing and they want to have this hobby cult, and sob-sit bullshit is perfect for these people because they can continue being peace, love and light and just go against the government. And then they get the conflict they're desiring because, let's face it, deep down they're angry motherfuckers.
Tell me a little bit about that weird Samson speech. We've earmarked him now as the guy who outed some poor guy named Andrews.
Firstly, I don't even know how he got to do a speech, because the rest of them that got up were kind of, little groups, Tribe and My Place. And then he just got up there and he was, like it was, in your darkest hour, that's where you'll find the truth. It was very strange. I'll find it, Jack, and I'll put it in our
It sounds
chat,
like he's the really pessimistic prophet from The Life of Brian. The one who's really violent and horrible and not really going anywhere. And of course, we need to talk about my favourite part of the whole thing, and so when MGG, Michael Gropey Grift, had the living suitcase beaten out of him from another freedom fighter somewhere in St Kilda Road, as I understand. What happened and who hit him?
Well, we covered the lead up to this in the last Tinfoil Tales, but just in case people don't know, Mickey Boy has allegedly been getting a little bit frisky with the women.
Yep. There have been some allegations, yes.
Yeah, he did kind of admit to it as well. Like, he did this apology where he said, hey, I like sex and I'm single.
Oh, God. I can't imagine. He looks like a garden gnome mixed with Saddam Hussein. I can't imagine. Just put your dick away.
Yeah, so some people felt he was a predator, but others felt he's just a bloke who likes sex, and on the whole, lots of people took his side.
Yeah.
And said, a man's going to be a man.
Yeah.
So there were genuine allegations of sexual assault or sexual harassment, shall we say. Just being careful. And they were just dismissed. They were just dismissed by the movement.
Yeah. The leaders, the other leaders wouldn't, stand up and say, what's the word I'm looking for?
You're naughty, Michael. That's the words.
Yeah.
Michael, stop being such a naughty boy.
Go to the place.
like they wouldn't disendorse him or anything. Yeah. But yeah, so he showed up on Saturday, and I actually remember seeing him there going, holy shit, what's he doing here? You know, that's okay. They've really accepted him back in, but apparently not everyone had accepted him back in. Because he did a post about an hour later. Like, it was really quick. I think I saw him at something like 5:55 p.m. and he was posting before 7 and saying that, and he had this massive cut to his eyebrow and his
big
egg
in the eyebrow. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And he was explaining.
It only just started swelling.
Yeah. So it was really soon, and he did this very vague video saying that he had that someone had not appreciated his presence, and someone in the freedom movement had beat him up, and he was all about, let's not be so divided and let's come together. And all this stuff, kind of like
fucking cooked.
Can I just say
that? But it's fine.
Can I just say that every now and then I tweet something that I think's actually quite funny myself, right? So I'm actually going to say I do think I posted the funniest thing, because people were like, I wonder what happened to him. Maybe he was drunk, maybe. And I said he hit his head getting down off the cross.
Yeah. It's so true. It's
probably
so true. He's such an arsehole.
He's from the theatre, of course.
He is.
And he's very unused to dealing with people with his background. And then some of them just get irrationally upset and angry. And he'd be, MGG would be going, oh, look, can't we just sort this out? We'll go and talk about it. We'll have a seminar.
Yeah.
Well, his approach turned out a bit different this time, but we'll go over that in a sec.
Yeah. So then another video surfaced.
Saw that.
I can't remember if it was later that night. I think it might have been.
Yeah, it was about 8 o'clock, I think. That's when I first saw it.
Yeah. So it was from a guy who claimed he did it, and he told a totally different story.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy's called Wasim Hussein.
Yes,
I got that right? Yeah. Yeah, and he's actually quite well known. Soz actually picked it out. She goes, oh, that's the donut guy. So
he's Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, that guy.
Yes.
Yeah, the angry donut.
The guy who marched into a Dunkin' Donuts and abused the staff there for being open during a lockdown, I think, as they were in food prep.
That was the one.
Yeah, he's like, what is everybody doing here getting donuts, But, yeah, he has a real mouth on him, and he admitted it. He has a mouth, and he had to go.
That, yeah.
So he's gone up to Michael and been like, oh, I can't believe you're here, yada, 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 at him. And then apparently talks about, walked off or something like this. And then
MGG took the jacket off, didn't he? That's that. According to Hussein, he's taken the jacket off. So
it's Hamoud. Just saying, it's Hamoud.
Let's get ready. Hamoud.
Wasim Hamoud. Okay,
Wasim Hamoud.
I wasn't sure.
Sorry.
I don't have it in front of me.
That's right.
Sorry.
I just thought I'd double check.
So he claimed that MGG took the jacket off and initiated the fisticuffs.
Yeah.
And then, apparently jumped on top of him and punched him in the back of the head a few times or a bunch of times, and then he got him off, and whatever happened, Wasim won that fight.
Well,
it just sounds like great
I actually, when I heard him say, MGG hit me in the back of the head half a dozen times, I thought, I really can't see it. I just can't see it. And so, I just can't see MGG fighting his way out of all.
MGG has form for that.
Yeah.
He's done that before. He did it in Canberra.
Apparently, he picks on the smaller guys, apparently. Yeah. That's his
So
shtick.
back in Canberra, the very last, remember when he returned from his pilgrimage around Australia, whatever that thing was called. It now sounds like it was just, literal shag and wagon moved its way. Went around Australia.
On tour.
Correct. And when they got back to Canberra, I remember they all went up there, and one of the Canberra guys yelled out at the end of a live stream of Tony Ants that he was a pedophile protector, or you stand with pedophile protectors. And then he called him it again. And then apparently Michael jumped him from behind
Of course.
And then when Steve turned round,
I did not know this.
Michael kind of scampered off and hid behind some women.
That's right.
And then Steve hit him,
He's a
and then
sniper.
he got chased out of Canberra by those guys. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's a sniper.
It was one of those things where basically this guy, he said that he was a small guy. He said he's a non-violent guy. Griffith wanted to make a point of it, so he had to go at him. And despite his best efforts of outweighing him, jumping on top of him, punching him in the head several times, which apparently weren't very effective, because you punch me in the back of the head 9 times, I'm going to be concussed.
You're going to be concussed.
He just can't punch, which is fine. But what's going on here is that he started a fight, he thought he could win, and he lost because he's a fucking asshole. But I mean, this wasn't the only conflict that we saw, and it's internal conflict. We did have people from the general public coming out and saying these guys are assholes, but of course the cops made sure that everyone was safe from the general public because that's what the cops do, which is kind of annoying. But on Sunday, we saw more of this sort of internal conflict between the ranks because there was something that happened with Anthony Burge and the Canberra crew, and I only really saw vague things about it because it managed to make it to news.com.au, which I thought was very funny because you've got their old fucking violent, unwashed idiot Brad Beeman there standing there getting all this like weird negative but limelight, and then Tammy Jane, like she was in the media, she's just completely brushed over. I think it's very funny that Canberra Cookers took the spotlight. So what happened there? What happened between Burge and Brad?
So on Sunday they finished at Parliament Steps, and there was some footage of them enjoying a few VBs. So there was a little bit of alcohol involved. So they go back to Government House and they were having a barbecue, little bit of a dance, you know. Ivan Beecroft was there singing, you know, all the hits. And Burge has been streaming all day, continuous as he always used to, God bless him.
Yes.
So he noticed that over by the gates there was a little bit of noise, so he heads over there. Cops are now lined up in front of the gates, and Brad and the Canberra guys, joined by some of the Melbourne ones as well, wasn't just Canberra, doing the normal thing, cameras out in the cops' faces. You're predicting pedophiles. Have you heard about the New World Order? What do you think about the Great Reset? All the normal stuff. Right?
Normal stuff.
What they do. So a couple of the older veterans that were down there actually came over and stood between the cops and them and asked them to stop and said, this isn't what we're about.
Yeah.
We don't want this. Can you please stop? So Brad in particular doesn't really like it, tells one of the old blokes to get stuffed.
Yeah.
More of the veterans all arrive. Brad wanders off as he does and leaves Jesse behind to do the more calm talking. You can't tell us how to protest. We're here to protest. I didn't come from Canberra to sit in a park. I came from Canberra to protest. This is a freedom movement.
Yeah.
Veterans in the end go, fuck yes, do what you want, and walk off. But Auntie Colleen Morris was also there. So Auntie Colleen has worked with them a little bit before. She's actually the Indigenous elder that they used to justify their vigil. Remember when they were down there last year? Auntie Colleen, it should be said, is known to police in Victoria because she's actually done a whole heap of stuff around youth justice programs. And she's actually, like, she was rattling off cops' names to the cops. Oh, how's this one and how's that one? So, like, she is actually someone who's actually has done some good stuff.
Yeah.
So she then asks them to stop the yelling and just go back to the group. You know, she tries to explain, this isn't a place for war. This is a place for peace. You've brought your war with you. We're trying to reestablish. And what she said was really valid. You know, she said, we're trying to reestablish trust between us and the police. We need trust. We need trust for our children if they're ever in trouble, that they feel safe to go up to a policeman and ask for help. So she asks them to move on. At this point, Brad calls her a traitor. For standing in front of the cops.
Nice.
Right?
It's always treason with these guys.
So you're a traitor. By the way, Colleen's about 70, I would suggest.
Gassy stuff.
So at this point, Brad, you know, even gets my shackles up. At this point, I'm like, fuck this. I'm getting in my car. I'm going down there.
I got to sort this out.
Because he starts inferring that, like, if you haven't been in Canberra, then you haven't protested. You know, and I'm sitting at home, like, thinking, mate, I'm sorry, writing chalk messages and putting up glad wrap doesn't make you a hero for the revolution. Like,
you are homeless and you are using protest as an excuse to camp in public.
You're trying to tell these people that you're standing with who protest during lockdowns. You know, these guys up in Canberra are protesting at a time where there is no restrictions. You can do what you want. The Melbourne movement was anchored in actual civil unrest. People who were breaching the law to actually go out there and protest. So
fair.
Off he goes. You guys should respect us. How dare you speak to us like that?
Blah, blah, blah.
Then his attention somehow centers on poor Anthony Burge, who, by the way, looks like a walking corpse at the moment.
He's not well.
Like, he is really not well.
No.
And he's like, why are you filming us? And Burge is like, mate, I've been streaming all day. And then he tells him, you're an infiltrator. And Burge goes off his head. Like really steps right into it. Who are you? Get fucked. Who do you think you're talking to? I've been here since day one.
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
That's fair.
Then he says, are you a cop? They start telling Burge, stop filming. You're causing division. And you're airing our dirty laundry. To which he's like, no, like that's the whole thing that we say we're against. So you're trying to control the narrative. That's why we hate mainstream media. Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, in the comments, everyone is like going mental in the comments.
Really?
Billy from AUM, he's sitting at home watching this. Next minute, he's in the car. And he's like, I'm on my way. Classic. So Billy pulls up, beelines straight to the front, goes mental because there's two kids literally standing right in the middle of this, right? And he is screaming at them about these kids and putting kids on the front line. Those two kids that he's talking about were also there on the Saturday night at Parliament when they were kicking
the doors and
things. Yeah. The mum's there too, by the way.
Of course. Completely enabling.
And she's like,
this whole
they're
thing.
fine.
Yeah. Is that a Frankston accent there, Franga?
Franga by way of Doveton. So there's just so much yelling, right? Everyone's yelling at each other. People who know Burge, who have marched with Burge in Melbourne, are not backing Burge. They're actually siding with the guys from Canberra.
No, are you serious?
Right? It was crazy.
Like such a Stockholm syndrome.
Crazy. So eventually they're like, let's go. So Burge keeps streaming till they get right the way down to the bottom of the driveway. He then turns his live off. But they were obviously watching his live because the minute his live goes off, they all run down and chase after him. Right?
Oh my God.
Unbeknownst to them, Auditing Australia, old mate Shane, has also seen what's going on and thought, fuck that. So he's now walking along the street filming them. So they're trying to put Burge and his girlfriend, who they were abusing horribly, by the way, into a car to take them back to Parliament to pick up their own car. Yeah. So Shane's there. He's then abused. They call him an infiltrator, to which Shane responds, infiltrate my cock, which I think is one of the best lines I've ever heard.
That's great.
I don't know if you guys know who Shane from Auditing Australia is. He is the biggest cop pest. He goes into their police stations and films them. He's got endless cases.
Oh, God.
When they said you are an infiltrator, you are a cop, all I could imagine was all the cops who were probably also watching Anthony Burge's stream, just laughing their heads off, thinking, if you think this bloke's an infiltrator, then you're an idiot. Yeah. So that's that. We stick with Shane. So he's filming himself walk all the way back to Parliament. Gets back to Parliament, they're fucking there again. They've gone to Parliament to try and find Burge.
Oh my God.
Because they knew that's where his car was. So then it kicks off again. They're in Shane's face. Shane's a big bloke. So That all happened on Saturday night. It was hectic.
Was his
It
cock
would
ever
seem that
infiltrated?
MGG was the most seriously injured from out of the lot. I mean, there was just a lot of yelling on this occasion.
That was a lot of yelling.
Yeah.
There was a lot of yelling.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of chest pumping and not much, but it could easily have gone. Because, like, Brad's the kind of guy who just wants horror. He's just a psychopath. And Jesse's no better. I mean, they're just terrifying people.
It feels like this event just won't end, but it does. It was meant to be a 5-day protest, and we are at day 4, and there's already been bickering, blood, and endless drama. How did Monday play out? Was it just quiet? Was it nothing? I heard they took a little trip down to the Pfizer building to harass workers there, and bizarrely enough, down to Channel 9 in Richmond. Not sure what they've done wrong. I thought they hated the ABC, which is closer, actually.
Yeah,
a lot closer than Richmond.
We weren't sure why they didn't go to ABC. That was so weird to all of us.
Yeah, I mean,
I think they just watched a lot of commercial television, and they knew that Channel 9 was in Richmond, and they said, "Let's just go there."
Yeah, that's it. Like, I mean, like, I thought, I swear I saw signs saying that ABC lies and things like that as well. Like, it's just bizarre. Like, I mean, like, go after Auntie. The
Channel 9's actually moved, Jack. They're at Docklands, right next to Channel 7.
Oh, well, see, I'm talking old Melbourne.
So they didn't go to Bendigo Street, which is where
Bendigo Street, Richmond. Yeah, sorry.
They went to like the corporate. They went to like the corporate office.
You've been away for too long, mate. So look, we have the usual feral freedom fighter types and the usual influencer types like Michael Grey Grope telling the crowd what they want to hear. But Tammy made sure we had the real stars of the show here, which were the cooked farmers and the discredited doctors. So what was the role of the humble farmer in all this? Because everyone loves a farmer. What did they get up to? Like, we heard before that there were, farmers involved, but what did they actually do?
This was meant to be the highlight of the whole event, and I was super excited to get my ass down there on Monday. Like, I organised my son for daycare. I took a day off work. I went down there. I was so excited. I wanted to watch the entire farming sector join the freedom fighters and bring all their tractors and block the CBD. But to say I was let down is a total understatement, guys.
Yeah, didn't see any of this in the news. Yeah, keep going.
Nah, 2 bloody tractors on truck trailers and a banner in between.
I saw that. That's sweet. So shit.
But that's not the only funny part. They parked these tractors in the parking lane out the front of the governor's house. So the grand old Duke of York marched his 500 men down the hill, 100 metres down a bloody driveway. That's it. That was their march for the farmers.
They blockaded the governor's house driveway. Is that it?
Yeah, they were all kind of camped out the front of that. Yeah.
Just pointless.
Yeah. And so they're marching down like their 100 metres, and they've got the drums going, and everyone's chanting, save the farmers and New World Order, we say no.
Good. Yeah, cool.
All of that. So once they got to the end of the driveway, to the tractors that were set up, they crowded in front of the tractors, and what do you know? More speeches.
Speech. God, they fucking love speeches.
Oh, God, they do, yeah. So and it was really funny because, like, Wade gets up and he's talking about the plight of the farmers and how the government is deliberately trying to cause a famine via food shortages and passing bills that will force farmers to vaccinate their stock and take away their water and their land.
Yeah, bullshit.
But, yeah, Sauce and I figured out pretty early on, actually, that he didn't have the farming sector behind him as he promised. And we kind of knew it wasn't going to be a big event.
Aww.
Like, I expected a few more tractors than the 2 that we got. Like seriously, I got there and I'm messaging Sauce and I'm like, there's 2. There's only 2 tractors. I don't see any. I don't see anything
It's like
else.
the truck convoy with no trucks. There were no trucks.
Yeah. So, we did a little bit of investigating as well when we were kind of like trying to suss him out. And we kind of bugged the president of the Victorian Farmers
to
Federation.
Sandy's being polite, saying we bugged this president of the Victorian Farmers Federation. Really didn't like Sandy and I on Twitter for a while.
Aww.
We pissed her off, but well, because we thought at the start, because he was part of the Victoria's Farmers Federation, he had tried to be elected as a president at one stage, and he was being introduced as a Victorian farmer. So we thought maybe they were behind it. He was promising that he had the farmers behind him and everything. So when we were like, holy crap, Emma, are you guys part of this? And she's like, no, we're not.
No,
She
no.
had nothing to do with it. So that's when we kind of went, oh, okay, so all right, he's probably bullshitting then. And then we looked at his website because he was claiming to be the founder of Billboard Battalion. So we're like, well, what's this group? So we went and looked, nothing about farmers at all on any part of this website. It was all anti-vax. Complete vaccines, poison, blah, 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 blah.
Usual shit.
The usual. And plus the fact that he also was on Maria Z talking about the Nuremberg Code. We knew exactly what we were dealing with at this stage. And look, he didn't disappoint that day. He made claims of the Nuremberg trials and the so-called agenda to genocide all of us. And, his take on it is that there's 3 steps to the agenda. They're going to use the vaccines were the step 1, food shortages are step 2, and then there'll be an energy crisis, and that'll be our step 3. So,
good.
Yeah, very doom and gloom for all of us.
Well, I think he's got a bit out of order, actually. I think it's the energy crisis first at the moment.
It does seem a bit like that, doesn't it?
But look, let's move on to the doctors. We've heard that Mr. William Bay, no longer a doctor, who basically dared APRA to strike him off, fucked around and found out, which they did. And then we have Mr. Mark Hobart, the doctor who made a few bucks on the side writing COVID exemptions for cookers and found himself becoming a mister instead of a doctor as well.
Yes, he did.
What was their go? Was it worth ruining their respective lives to get attention from this desultory crowd of cookers?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm almost tempted to give Dr. Billy, best on ground.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mainly because he wasn't even invited. He wasn't invited. He wasn't highlighted. He wasn't supposed to speak, but he came and he was almost the star from that barefoot bridge video. While the fight was kicking off between Brad and the veterans, he saw that all the attention was there, so he went down there and did like a big praise Jesus speech.
Oh, fucking hell.
From there, he went with them to Pfizer and he was blowing his little bugle. Like, he doesn't miss an opportunity to grandstand. I think he has seen Houdet parlay that pilot into a career as a speaking circuit, because Houdet's doing continual regional speaking tours.
Interesting.
That's all he does now, and I reckon Billy Bay is like, maybe
I could do that.
Maybe that's going to be me in the future, because I reckon Houdet's getting 1,500, $2,000 at every country town, I reckon, with these little big Aesop story.
Yeah.
As for Hobart, he just keeps saying the same stuff over and over. He's running in the state election, this time for Morgan's anti-freedom party.
Oh, so, yeah, he's got a great chance of winning, surely.
Yeah. He got 500 votes last time around. So.
Yeah, you'll piss it in, don't worry. So we're up to, that's the end of Monday, right?
Yes.
God, so now we're on to Tuesday. This event will never end. But it's the final day of the 5, the test match of cookers. And this is a test match between basically anti-vaxxers and cookers in the city of Melbourne. What happened on the last day and who won the test match?
Oh, look, they were always winning.
But, yes, of course.
Day 5 was it was unnecessary.
Like many cricket matches.
Yeah, like days 4, 3, 2 and 1.
Yeah.
Right. On the itinerary, they were to spend the day protesting in front of news media locations again. And they were warned, this day would require stamina and commitment.
Yeah.
But, 4 big days in the city, partying, infighting. and all the rest of it, saw our merry band of freedom warriors complain of sore tootsies.
Aww.
And Mission to Melbourne closed with about...
Had a sickie, pulled a sickie.
Yeah, that's it. And Mission to Melbourne closed with about 30 protesters making one last hurrah and wrapping up at noon.
Oh, that's
early.
early.
Getting on the road early.
Yeah,
But
10 wickets by lunch.
But we weren't finished just yet.
Oh.
Because at the end of Mission to Melbourne, Tony Ant, who hasn't said a word the entire time, has decided to come off the long run and potted every single person in the movement.
Fantastic.
Hoodie, Christian Mack, the Canberra guys, Sotradan even said he wasn't sure about Ricardo Bosey.
Them's fighting words.
Could have been listening to the Dirt Unit podcast.
Very angry, very bitter, and he just kept talking. There was actually so much to go through that we're going to have to go through it again. We actually had a listening party for it last night with a few other people on the Discord.
That's very funny.
But we're going to have to watch it again because this time I want to actually read the comments because people were going to town. There was people who hated everyone and they all hated different everyones and they were arguing in the comments. It was perfect way.
So much popcorn.
End it.
It sounds like an absolute train wreck. I mean, this sounds like the fall of Rome. This is everything is just falling apart here, and the fractures have formed before the event. You know, we sort of know that, but this is. I mean, I'll ask for your comments and just to speculate, but the division caused by the allegations of sexual assault against prominent members of the movement, you know, and other women would come and support him and defend him, including a fully grown middle-aged man who dresses like Wally from Where's Wally? Was he there, by the way? Was Where's Wally there? He was there.
Yeah, he was.
Wearing his costume.
That's his stick. I don't know how you're going to deprogram that guy. I really don't.
No.
Anyway, this is all sort of really predictable that this thing would sort of come to an end, and it seems to have come to an end in Melbourne, probably where it started in the first place in the very early days of the pandemic. And it just seems like, is it the end? I mean, I know we'll have the rusted-ons and they'll stay and they'll still have these little schisms and divisions and so forth, but it just seems like this is the end for them. You know, and they're just hanging on. They've got another month or so until the Victorian election, and there's the last hurrah there, and then there's a New South Wales election. There's always something to hang on to, but it just seems like this is just dead. You know.
Well, to say this is a movement that does not have a power structure would be incorrect, and I think many people within it have had a realisation, like there's almost been like a mass awakening inside it. You know, like the treatment or lack of response these allegations got from other leaders have disillusioned many. And for the first time, we've actually heard the term cult being used by some of them.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
That is a great awakening. Yeah, wow.
So not just the lack of response from other leaders, but also the response from others who defended their idols. So despite overwhelming testimony against them, they just would not discredit them in any way.
Yeah. Well, they had too much to lose.
Yeah. And given that a majority of followers likely gravitated to this sort of movement due to likely past abuse and vulnerability, this has really shaken them up and created a distrust.
Interesting.
But whether people will leave the movement over this, I'm kind of on the fence. Yeah. Because already we have seen the OGs of the movement, such as Yusra, Jackie, Millie and Mike, getting together on a live like they used to do in the old days. And, you know, they get together and they discuss it and they, you know, talk about how to move forward from it and how they have had plans to do things when the weather turns nice again. So maybe they will take the reins back again. I'm speculating.
But not leave.
Yeah, they'll keep it going. But, there was definitely division leading up to Mission to Melbourne. People were already saying that they didn't want to protest anymore, that it's inefficient, it's ineffective, it doesn't solve anything. There were talk of grifters using events like this to make money, sell show bags, merch and the like. And then it was just another freedom festival and they were sick of it. But then the allegations with Michael started, and it was inevitable that it was going to be a bit of a train wreck. But I reckon that the followers just want to create their own off-grid parallel communities right about now with other like-minded people. You know, they've left their families behind. It's going to be really hard for them to go back to their lives that they had pre-COVID and, you know, their great awakening. But, yeah, this would be a time to leave it and save face for a little bit for sure.
Yeah.
I think as well, there's the fair weather fans, you know, for people like Yusra and Mick, like they're not about COVID, they're anti-vaxxers.
Yeah.
So you've still got this core of people
that is
who
clear.
have been doing this protesting and doing this stuff for a lot longer than the last 2 years. And I think, to Sandy's point, I think they've kind of stepped back over the last 12 months, but we could be seeing that they might step forward again.
Yeah, so I mean, there we have, that's the Mission to Melbourne. It's this brain fart of Tammy Jane, and it feels like this final hurrah of the movement, but as we've discussed, is it really? We don't really know, and what we do have to look forward to from the usual suspects in Melbourne and Canberra is probably just more of the same bullshit with dwindling numbers and more extremity. I don't know, you know, more of a lean towards soft sits, anti-vaxxers will start being anti-vaxxers again. Is it the end of the road, or are we simply looking at this sort of new paradigm where it's more of a fractured movement where smaller groups take on these roles and they do some crazy shit? I'm not really sure. What do you guys think as far as this kind of thing? Because we've just sort of gone through it a bit, but like, I'm not sure if these guys are going to wake up from this bizarre cult and say, hold on, maybe it was all bullshit, or if they're just going to continue down a similar but slightly different path.
Yeah, I don't believe that any of this drama has caused them to reconsider their beliefs at all. You know, the world is still ending. They just need to figure out a different way.
Right.
But the movement as we know it will likely have a shift.
I think, look, some have drifted away, yeah? But others are definitely still in it for the fight. They're just going to do different things. You know, some will come back. The minute that they sense some kind of power vacuum, there's always someone new waiting in the wings. In Billy, as an example, you know,
I think some of them simply can't. And I think they simply can't resume their lives.
They've burned too many bridges.
Yeah, this has become their life.
That's rad, yeah. So you reckon Billy's the next one?
Well, Billy has a vigil already planned for the lead up to the election. He was highly critical of the timing of Mission to Melbourne, not of Mission to Melbourne. He actually thought Mission to Melbourne was a good idea, but he just didn't understand if the whole thing was about Dan Andrews, why are you doing it 6 weeks out from an election? That just didn't make any sense to him. So, you know, but, you know, who knows? Because Billy left Sunday night fighting with half the Melbourne movement over their treatment of Anthony Barge. So who knows? And in the last 24 hours, 2 of the Saturday organisers have both posted on social media that they've had enough and they're stepping away. It's time to spend time with their families.
Oh, the poor families.
So hopefully, hopefully they do. I just have to. We were talking about Jackie Dundee just before on a live, and I've actually gone through my tweets because Jackie led one of the protests, and I think we just need to take a minute to recognise true art when it comes to a chant.
Oh, brilliant.
Constitution is the power. It protects us every hour.
It doesn't protect anything.
That's what she had them chanting.
It doesn't mean anything, but it's catchy.
It's kind of catchy. It's upsetting. It's so funny. Maybe someone just needs to buy her a green card for Christmas and send her to the US. Because she just doesn't belong here.
I love that when she goes, the Constitution is supreme. And that was it. She couldn't figure out that she had nothing. She goes, I've got nothing.
That's great. I like it with scones and cream.
There was some very, very bad chants. Very bad chants.
Look, one thing that I did want to draw everyone's attention to, listeners in particular, is the 22nd of October. I mean, there's ongoing rallies, so we're talking about the movement. It's certainly not going anywhere. It may drop off in numbers, and it may shapeshift. And this is one of those shape-shifting exercises I can see happening. 22nd of October in Sydney, at Sydney Town Hall. It's a Saturday. It's called a March for Australian Neutrality.
Okay.
And that's kind of an old left-wing peacenik fixation. And it really is a very pro-Russian thing. It's not, all peace and love and let's stop the fighting. And it means what they're really advocating for is a pro-Russian position where NATO step aside, stop arming Ukraine, and presumably, so the war won't stop. It'll just mean that Russia will win it.
So they're appealing to basically left-wing tankies and right-wing anti-vaxxer dipshits who love authoritarian figures like Putin. Or at least are just so fucking gullible they've been told he's the good guy.
Correct.
Because Ukraine's full of Nazis and blah, 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 and NATO are evil because blah, blah, blah.
So our old friend Simeon Boykov is an absolute starter there, you'd reckon.
You'd think so.
He would certainly be there. It'd be very interesting to see if there's any Russian money there. I'd be surprised if there's not, actually. This March for Australian Neutrality is very similar to the Stop the War coalition in the UK. Jeremy Corbyn, the former Labor leader in Great Britain, is a prominent member and prominent speaker, and it's the same thing. It's not, we want the war to end and we want the misery to stop. And we want civilians to stop being killed. It's nothing to do with that.
No.
It's basically we want NATO out of this so Russia can basically get what it wants.
Yeah.
And so I see this as being a big part of that. It's a Sydney thing because Boykov has really just been, and Bosey too, they've been sort of militarising the Cooker movement to a large degree.
Yeah. And just feeding
Simeon's posted
bullshit.
a lot of YouTube videos in the last week as
I
well.
wanted to ask you just how active he's been. I've seen really nothing of him.
In the last week, he's definitely building for this.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
Be very interesting to see. I presume he has a number of sort of restrictions on his conduct.
Correct.
You would think so,
that will keep him out of the line of keep him from being the nuisance he has been in the recent past.
Well, we'll see what happens on the weekend, I suppose. He's going to want to cause shit because that's
Saturday fortnight, Joel. It'd be a good one to see. It'd be a really interesting one to see because you have some experience of the sort of left wing, and there'll be a few people there. I'd imagine the Australian Socialist Alliance will be there.
Socialist
and then you'll see
alternative.
some people from the extreme right. This is what we're seeing throughout Europe, by the way. The extreme left and the extreme right are the ones who are getting out there and rallying and using sort of subterfuge about, energy crises and food shortages and all this sort of stuff. But what they're really doing is saying we want European support for Ukraine to stop.
Yeah, it's a similar thing with anti-Semitism. You've got the anti-Zionists on the left and then you've got the Nazis on the right. And they have this, unfortunate little bit where they're like, oh, I can see your point, mate. I'm looking at you over the fence, but I can relate to you on that one. You're like, don't.
Weird.
No, you're both bad. This is terrible. Have a moment of reflection. Stop.
Well, people just dismiss it, so it's like the horseshoe expression of ideological affiliation, and left and right are closer together than they are to the centre, and I get all that, but for warriors in the past, the left was the left and the right was the right, and never the twain would meet. But that's now very different.
Yeah, it's a weird paradigm. Well, that's Mission to Melbourne, and the question
Fantastic
of where
work,
things are
guys.
going. Well, we're looking at some really weird shit, which may include even Russian-funded fucking anti-war groups. There you go.
Well, that's absolutely why Boykov got involved in the anti-vax and freedom movements.
Recruit
promote
idiots.
a Russian agenda.
Okay, well, I say recruit idiots. You say promote a Russian agenda. I'd say that's probably two sides of the same coin.
I think it is. And you have been listening to a special episode of the Conditional Release program with your host, Jack the Insider, and Joel Hill, and Tinfoil Tale hosts, Sandy and Sauce. If you haven't already, have a listen to the excellent work Sandy and Sauce have done under the Tinfoil Tales podcast. You can find it on the Conditional Release program podcast feed.
Jack can be found on Twitter on @JackTheInsider and Joel on @CrunchyMoses with a K. You can find Sandy on @SunnySandy with 2 E's, L, and Soz on @Soz149. They have great Twitter accounts. Follow them. Unfollow us. Follow them. They're great. Better than us.
And finally, all feedback, tips and death threats should be sent to the conditional release program at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Even you, Simeon, even if it's to tell us how much you love Tinfoil Tales more than the conditional release program. Yes, we know. They're great. Yeah. Thanks so much, Sandy and Sauce, for this. It's been a great chat.
Yeah,
thanks for having
guys.
us. Love and light. Love and light.
See you,
Melbourne has been healed. Just remember.
It's a lap of love. It's a lap of love.
I don't think I ever want to talk to any of those people.
Fuck me, you guys are bastards.
Where did you go to school? And who's your daddy?
What do you think of what's going on right now, mate?
These evil little invisible parasites.
Satan-worshipping Freemason morons.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
We're not run by factions.
Get the fuck out of Canberra!
There are much more powerful international forces at play.
Is this pink eye? Is this what pink eye is? I don't fucking know what's happening.
I had to actually Google it, neo-Nazi men.
Please go outside and look at the moon quickly.
It's been crazy, guys, but guess what? It's how it is, mate.
Mate, because I want to do you slowly.
But I ain't spending any time on it.
Welcome to the Conditional Release Program, a podcast that delves into the netherworld of cults, crims, and con artists. I'm Jack the Insider, otherwise known as Peter Hoysted for tax purposes.
And I'm Joel Hill, and...
Lots of love and light, guys.
Hey.
I'm Sandy.
And I'm Sauce. And this week we're covering Mission2Melbourne, a project that started as somewhat of a brain fart of the freedom fighter in that shit hat, Tammy Jane, and ended as a flop on the streets of Melbourne. That's right, there were dozens, I tell you, dozens wandering around while Tammy tried to unite the movement, but the fractures, guys, they're just too deep. And really, the whole thing turned to shit.
Of course it did.
That's right. The Mission2Melbourne feels like a final hurrah of the wider freedom movement. Allegations have surfaced that certain men in the movement can't keep their hands to themselves. And while many of the women in the movement tried to brush these allegations away or even side with the perpetrators, we are seeing some very prominent freedom fighters loudly proclaiming their exit from the movement. Are they bluffing, though? We are yet to find out.
Well, it's an excellent time to leave the movement. The mandates are all but gone. Masks are optional and COVID is tearing through the population, killing old people and delaying my bin collection for several days. And while I do sympathise with the dying elderly, the interruption COVID has brought upon council services is fucking unforgivable. And I place the blame squarely at the feet of anti-vaxxers and freedom fuckheads.
Yes, well, councils are technically illegitimate and they are not mentioned in the Constitution. For now, they are responsible for dealing with our garbage, but they've all got the spicy cough, apparently, and my bin is left to languish over the weekend while the garbos sit at home spluttering on their PlayStation controllers, calling in sick. These motherfuckers. But the thing is, and this is what makes me very angry at the freedom movement, it wouldn't be like this if we just wore fucking masks at the shops. But no, we had to have freedom instead. Well, now my bin smells. But I digress. It does appear to be a huge turning point for the movement. Mission2Melbourne was meant to be a show of strength and unity, and it was anything but. It was fucking embarrassing, a complete flop, and arguably the final death throes of the wider protest movement.
The movement isn't quite dead yet, though. Brad and Jesse and Dan and the rest of the gang are still occupying Canberra, and they're going to find it much easier to camp out now as the weather gets warmer. They're going to need more glad wrap.
Yeah, they are.
More glad wrap,
lot.
definitely.
And with the Victorian election around the corner, cookers will be hitting the streets to campaign against Dan Andrews and then spend the next few months whinging about electoral fraud.
Fraud, yeah.
But the movement as we know it is under some serious pressure, and the upcoming election wipeout could see more rats jumping from the ship.
Yeah, so let's look at Mission2Melbourne and let's start at the start. What is it, and who is behind it, and what's the point of it all, Sandy?
Well, at the beginning, the idea was cultivated by Tammy Jane and was meant to be a pushback at the government to see Dan Andrews not just sacked, but taken to trial and jailed over his handling of the unvaccinated and Melbourne citizens during the pandemic. No musics or speeches in a park, she said. She wanted a resistance. Sri Lankan style.
Yeah. Go and swim in Dan Andrews' pool.
And that's what piqued Tricky's interest at the time, who was also calling for a resistance and a revolution.
Ooh.
In return for the interstate freedom fighters missioning to Melbourne, Melbourne would then return the favour and there would be missions all over Australia at pivotal times.
Sounds like a plan.
But the thing is, how did it go? Like, did people actually mission to Melbourne?
Well, look, people did mission to Melbourne. Some people made their way down from far north Queensland. When I say some, it was 2 guys in their utes. They picked up some people as they went through Brizzy. The highlight of that was this beautiful white Range Rover driving away from what actually looked to be a really substantial property with their flags on the back of the Rangy. So they continued their way down the coast. They bypassed Canberra, didn't even stop, even though they were supposed to. Ended up in Albury. At that point, there was maybe 25 cars in that convoy. Yeah. Mick Sims was one of them. He came along at the last minute for the ride.
Oh, he got out of bed.
They were met down there by a bunch of loyal Victorian warriors. So they continued their way down the coast, didn't stop at Canberra, probably had a premonition maybe of what was going to come. And they ended up in Albury. And then there was about 25 cars maybe in that convoy, including the lovely Mick Sims, who decided to come in his house, also known as his car.
Yes, yes.
They were met down there by a bunch of loyal Victorians. There was cheering and flags and dancing and yeehaw! That's what it kind of looked like in the car park, to be honest.
Yeah, but what the hell was the lap of love? And how did that turn out? Where did they go and what did they get up to at the start?
So Tammy's idea was somehow this lap of love was going to undo the harm perpetuated on Melbourne and regional Victoria from the Ring of Steel. So that was her idea.
God,
I'm not quite sure why it was called a lap, because it actually wasn't a lap.
Not a lap.
Like, to me, a lap. You go around,
otherwise
but
you'll end up in Port Phillip Bay. Yeah,
correct. So the meeting point was Hungry Jack's at Calcallo, which is up past Donnybrook and very, very, very close to the actual quarantine facility, which I actually don't think they realised because they didn't drive past it. But Dan was controlling the weather hard on this day. And it was pissing rain, like real hard. So they decided they didn't know what they were going to do. So they said, let's all meet there and we'll just sit in our cars until the rain stops. So they did. They got there and they were in their cars. And the estimate literally went from 200 to 1,000 cars in the space of 15 minutes across 2 different live streams. Of course, to be honest, 200 was probably closer to the mark.
200 was about right. So there's 25 all the way from from Queensland, and then and it was ultimately
from South Australia. 4 people came from 4 cars from South Australia.
Are we sure about 200? It sounds like maybe 100 might be better, but you think 200?
I'll give them their 200.
Okay.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I'll rate
400 people, maybe.
So they decided to leave the car park, and they were heading to a pub at this point to wait out the rain. But the pub was like 1 block away from the car park. And
I know where it is. Yeah, I know that pub.
Their convoy, was the length of that block.
Oh.
So the people at the front made it to the car park, but the people at the back drove out of the Hungry Jacks and were just stuck in that bit of traffic.
That's great.
So
they made their own traffic jam.
Calcalo pub, basically.
That's great.
They
That's
did.
Just fantastic. And they didn't know
what to do. But then the rain stopped enough for them to head off.
Well,
and this is where it did get a little bit funny, because they were using Zello, a walkie-talkie app. Now, they used this for convoy to Canberra, and it was the same thing happened then. It was a debacle. But they always share the channel name. So the minute they share the channel name, we all know what the channel is now. So we're all now on there listening as well.
Yeah, that's great.
But there were a bunch of people that decided to have a little bit more fun than that. There was people on there mimicking Tammy Jane's voice. Hi guys, it's Tammy. We're just going to get off at the next freeway exit. There was people playing clips of that Michael Gropey Griff talking about his dick. There was people, pretending that they were in the convoy, saying, hey guys, can we just stop for a toilet break? When are we going to stop for a toilet break? It was crazy. And after every third person spoke, Tammy came on and said, guys, that's a troll. And then those people were coming back on going, we're not trolls, we're protesters. It was crazy. It was crazy. She literally didn't care. She got there quite early and she couldn't care that people were lost.
Yeah.
But while this is happening, there's a video of Dr. Billy Bay and beloved Mark Hobart standing on a freeway overpass in the pouring rain.
Yeah.
Dr. Bay's got no shoes on.
Yeah.
Mark Hobart is wearing 2 pairs of glasses. I don't know why he was wearing.
I saw that.
Blowing a bugle. And like at this point when this video is happening, they're all still at Hungry Jack's. Like they haven't even left. And they're filming going, look at this, guys. And it's just like normal freeway. It's not even them. They haven't left.
So fucking
but anyway, they got there in the end. And their meeting point was actually a field next to Tullamarine Airport.
Love a bit of real estate out there. But that's not a lap. That's not even a little bit of a lap. No. That's moving from one highway it's moving from the Hume Highway to the Tullamarine Freeway.
Correct.
That's really just a matter of kilometres. Yeah.
And they're all toll roads. So all the interstate people can expect some kind of toll notification.
Yes, horrific bills.
They'll never pay them. Never!
Yeah, that's it.
At one point, there was one car that was heading to Avalon Airport, got the wrong airport, so they were way off as well.
That is so good.
Yeah,
that is so far
away. That's a fair hike.
Many complaints about the organisation, about the map and everything.
There's 2 airports. This is bullshit. That's great. I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, so then what happened that night is they met in a park and had some speeches. So speeches were we saw Tricky, there was Nick Banjo Patterson, some tradie guy that we had no idea who that was. Just some random tradie, a few others, and was emceed by this. I kept thinking he was like Bruce Buffer from Wish, that cooked American Don. The way he was announcing, "Welcome to Mission to Melbourne."
They're such show ponies.
Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. But so Catherine Cummings. So we got on a live, and she was within minutes. She was like tiptoeing through the tulips straight to our live streamer, and of course to plug her independent party.
Yep.
So then after the speeches, they did a march around the city to all the areas where they had clashed with Vic Police during their lockdown marches. So such as CFMEU and Flinders Street Station.
Yeah.
As usual, there was a lot of angst at the CFMEU, where they cried really, salty tears have been started going on about every day,
Yeah, that was annoying.
Yeah, and the guys in the building must have had a heads up because there was a few of them standing guard at the door. And to be honest, I've actually thought it was going to ramp up at that stage. I thought, okay, something's going to happen, because, they're all trauma bonding and letting out their anguish at how unfairly they were treated. But yeah, no, it backed down. They had their little 1 minute of silence and moved on from that. So
they attacked the CFMEU headquarters, and now they're pissed off that the CFMEU headquarters existed. I don't understand the grievance.
Yeah, and like half of them weren't even at the CFMEU, half of them weren't even tradie protesters. But anyway.
No, like Lizzie Rose never lifted a brick in her life. I mean, she was there causing shit. Anyway, it's just very annoying because, they're sitting there going, oh, this is bullshit, my trauma. It's like, no, you went and you tried to trash a union building and then you got angry that somehow it didn't, fall over. I don't understand.
Yeah, and then at each stop they would stand for a minute of silence before moving on to the next one. And then they ended the tour at the shrine and, they went to the shrine. It was all dark. They had like candles going and then they had their silence, and then they had a quick speech from their token veteran, Glenn Agnew, of course.
What's he doing out of jail? Anyway.
And I think the worst thing, they were all wearing poppies.
Yeah.
As a sign of respect, but not a sign of respect for the diggers, but for the fallen from the freedom movement.
That's
they kept referring to them as being fallen.
That's so bad.